Celui qui s'engage dans le désert ne peut revenir sur ses pas. Et quand on ne peut revenir en arrière, la meilleure façon, c'est de se préoccuper, d'aller de l'avant. C'est une citation de Paulo Coelho, le célèbre auteur brésilien. Bonjour à tous et à toutes, c'est parti pour Connexion 360, notre destination hebdomadaire tous les samedis, 11h15 à Toronto, 16h15 GMT, 18h15 à Jobourg. Cette plateforme, Connexion 360, c'est celle qui nous permet de rester connectés avec des personnes qui façonnent leur quotidien à travers des conversations engageantes et significatives. Nous émettons de la chaîne Go Live TV, nous émettons sur Internet, sur YouTube en streaming et également sur Facebook et depuis peu sur Roku Box. Je suis votre hôte et je m'appelle Elikia Doumbé. Notre invitée, vous le voyez, aujourd'hui n'a pu nous rejoindre. Elle se trouve en Afrique du Sud et je suppose que la restriction de voyage qui frappe l'Afrique australe a également frappé l'Internet. Mais ce n'est pas grave, nous allons néanmoins honorer ce rendez-vous. Il était question aujourd'hui de discuter de comment écrire sa légende personnelle. Celle qui devait nous entretenir depuis l'Afrique du Sud s'appelle Beatrice Acheleke. Elle a su écrire sa légende personnelle avec beaucoup de grâce, beaucoup de classe, beaucoup d'authenticité. Elle venait ici nous partager son expérience. Je vous propose de la découvrir en images. Le document sera en anglais, c'est un document d'une quinzaine de minutes. J'espère que vous ne m'en voudrez pas parce que nous sommes sur un espace francophone. Mais lorsqu'on reçoit des gens intéressants, je pense qu'on ne doit pas faire l'économie d'une langue qui ne nous appartient pas. Et je ne vais pas me faire des amis encore une fois. Alors, à travers ce petit document, vous allez découvrir qui est Beatrice Acheleke, comment est-ce qu'elle a écrit sa légende personnelle. Je vous souhaite un bon visionnage. We can now roll the tape. À tout.
2 years ago, I had this hunger after I have done all the activities, won 9 prizes at the Global Diversity Innovation Award, and then I just knew I do not belong. I have learned the language, I have my kids here, but this sense of belonging is not there. So what are you? Who are you? Where are you going to?
I am Beatrice Acheleke, the great-granddaughter of Ngwise Fominka, the granddaughter of Atabong Asaba, the daughter of Emefwa Taku, a proud African woman, a learning mom, a committed serial author of the Africa for Smart Kids book series, a dedicated publisher of Ubuntu books, a passionate public speaker, an experienced executive trainer for corporates and individuals. My current portfolio includes over 29 years of global experience living and working in Europe, working with companies and organizations in the US, teaching, lecturing, and training companies in the field of diversity and inclusion, migration, integration, anti-racism, and human rights. What drives me in the current phase of my life is African history. It is collecting, documenting, and sharing African history and African stories. I do this not just through the series of books that I write and published, but also by coaching kids and adults to write their own stories, because I strongly believe that life is a story and some stories are life transformational. We need to tell our stories. I also run what I call the School of Life Masterclass, which you can find on my YouTube channel. It is a class during which I invite Africans who have journeyed through life to share their wisdom, the tools and the skills and tips that they have put together over as they journey through life that enable them to be their true self, their authentic self, and to be proud of who they are. I strongly believe that the history of the world is incomplete without our individual stories, without the history of Africa, and the history of Africa is made up of our individual stories. Well, I am a child of the 70s. I went through a very colonial system of education. That means that we did European history, European literature, and literally almost everything that we did was European. So I grew up not really knowing about my African culture, my African history. And you could say in a nutshell that that is what drives me today. That is what makes me so passionate about unleashing, unlocking, and sharing African history, because I want to overthrow that colonial heritage and to create a kind of education education that allowed me to be proud of who I am and also to help others to do same. Well, I lived in Austria for 20 years, and while in Austria, I traveled extensively to the US, different states in the US. I traveled extensively across Europe where I did a lot of work. I used to lecture in 6 different universities in Austria and Germany, and I did consultancy for companies as well in the area of diversity and inclusion. So that's literally my background. Being an African woman, to me, it's something very exciting, intimidating, and scary at the same time. Exciting because Africa is that continent that still has a whole lot to discover and to share. It's one of the continents that everyone thinks they know, but we literally know so little about. So it makes Africa exciting. Being an African woman makes it exciting for me to go on that journey of discovery and to share bits and pieces of my African history. It is scary because there are so many negative stories about Africa. And when you grow up with that, you kind of get intimidated and you wonder what your future and the future of your children will look like. So, but that scariness is something that activates my curiosity. And it is powerful. It is powerful because it gives me the courage and the determination to do the things that I do, which is writing books and teaching myself and using the knowledge that I gain from teaching myself to teach other people about Africa. Well, the Africa for Smart Kids book series, you can say, is my legacy project. As a mom, I grew up, I had my kids in Europe. And coming from the educational background that I came from, it became very challenging for me to teach my children about my continent. And the schools that they attended in Europe had this very cliched picture of Africa, very old pictures. And so my children used to feel really, really sad when there were conversations about Africa in school. And they encouraged me to write books about Africa that will help them be proud of that heritage of theirs and not always be ashamed when someone talks about Africa. So the Africa for Smart Kids book series is a journey into educating myself and helping my children to be able to answer some of the questions about Africa. But it is also a series that goes beyond me and my children that I hope will help a whole lot of other families that struggle with their African identity, that struggle with the knowledge of their African culture, that struggle with information about Africa. I hope that this series is going to help them to find the joy of being African, to find the pleasure in their African identity, and to own and drive it with pride. Well, the vision is very clear. I want these books to be in every household. I want them to be in every library. I want them to be in every school. And I wish that this book will be used even by homeschoolers. And the vision is to just make sure that everyone who has a passion for Africa, whether you're an African or not, whether you're an expatriate in Africa, whether you are someone who is supportive about Africa, someone who is keen and passionate about education, I want that this book should be in your hands. They should be the books that you read for your children when they go to sleep. There should be books that you use to run quizzes and do tests. And there's just so much fun that you can get from these books because it is not written from a very classical perspective. So these books, they really give you the space to experiment with education, with fun-filled learning. They come in different forms and different shapes and different sizes, and above all, they ignite your creativity, they ignite your curiosity about Africa. So I really hope that people will have fun reading these books and that they will share and make sure that they go to different places. And sometimes, the next level of the vision is to have a school where we can teach children African history, African culture using these books. That is the next level of my vision with this book. In 5 years, I see these books again in many more libraries and schools in Africa, in the diaspora. I see 1 million books in 1 million households or 1 million little kids' hands. I see people talking about these books, not because they are just ordinary books, but because of the pleasure and the delight that they have reading the books, because of the pride that they have reading the books. And so in 5 years, I hope that my School of Africa, which is the next level of the book, will be on and going. My School of Africa is the space where people can come to, both adults and children, families can come in to learn about the African history that they normally do not learn in schools. So the vision in 5 years is to have these books in as many hands as possible and to have my School of Africa on and going. Identity is a very, very important construct. Identity is who we are, is where we come from, is what we relate to, is what we are taught, how we are brought up, where we are born. It drives us whether we like it or not. So for me, it is so important that we have a proud sense of our identity, a proud sense of where we come from. If we don't have an identity in the world that we live in, the world will impose an identity to us, and that imposed identity may not be what we want. And tragic may be when we turn to start putting in all our efforts to become who we think that others want us to be. So having a proud sense of your identity is so important in order for you to become who you want. When you know who you are, you can do the things that you do best, and you can bring the best impact in the world. I attach a lot of emotion and importance to the concept of identity. Well, the word Africanness is a word that I use very often. It's a word that I created to remind me constantly that I'm an African. It is a concept that allows you to embrace your identity, to embrace all your culture, your traditions with pride. It's a concept that makes you know that Africa was born in you and you were born in Africa. It's more than just saying I am African. Saying my Africanness means everything that makes me feel like I am an African. It can be in the way that I show up, in my skin color, in my culture, in the food that I eat, in the places that I go to, in the way I show up in the world. So it's a whole collection of a lot of factors and values that make up what I call my Africanness. Well, my key message to Africans is that we are a continent that is less known. Africa offers a whole lot to the world. It has always been. Africa has a lot of civilizations. And when you know African history, you know that Africa is older than the rest of the civilizations in the world. So it is one of the continents that still needs us to discover. So whether you are on the continent, you're in the diaspora, whether you're an African, black or north, you're from the north, from the south, from the east, you're in the diaspora, I think that we have a responsibility to tell the African story the way it is, and that means that we have to be curious. We have to open our minds and meet the continent with an open mind, with a curious mind, and to seek to understand what Africa really is, what Africa really offers, which is far beyond what the media, the politics, and old history tells us about. So I encourage you and I challenge you to do your own research wherever you are and to bring up what you think the world needs to know about Africa that the world doesn't know from the perspective of where you are right now. I just want to see more young Africans becoming authors and content creators. Well, the inspiration behind my book series, the Africa for Smart Kids book series, are first of all my children, and the fact that I needed to find out who I really am. And when I went out doing research, I came across some very, very powerful Black history master teachers. I'll put them that way because most of them are Black. And people like John Henry Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, Cheikh Anta Diop, Steve Biko, Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, Wangari Maathai, Winnie Mandela, and a bunch of other Black women who inspire me. Mary McLeod Bethune, who was the first Black woman to open up a school in the US, and she grew up to become a member of Congress. She was a very influential woman. There is a college named after her. So there are a lot of Black people, Black history teachers who have inspired me. People like Ronoko Rashidi, who just recently passed away. When I read these people's books, it tells me that Africa is not the Africa that we know. They just bring a different perspective and they fight to bring the message to the table. So the fight that they put in and the passion that they put to the table really shows me how important it is that we take our history seriously and that we search for messages, that we go for history written by Black people for Black people. That I'm very specific about it. It doesn't mean that I'm excluding white people. I just mean that in terms of our history, I know the white version already. This time I'm looking for the Black version of African history. Toni Morrison said one thing to me. She said, if there is something that you want to do and you don't find it, do it. No, she said, if there is a book that you want to read and you don't find it anywhere, write it. So that was for me a driving force to write the kind of books that I would love my children to read about Africa, which I did not find anywhere. And maybe I should also add that 15 of these books have been approved by the Department of Education in Gauteng, that is in South Africa, and they are currently being read in schools. And I also love to add that I don't only write books, I coach people to write their own book. Since April 2019, I have been able to coach 15 kids to write and have their own books published. The youngest of them is 7 years old. These books have been approved for schools as well. Some of them have gone ahead to win awards. And I am very, very proud of this generation of content creators. And this is something that also drives me to write these books. When I see children who read this book, when I see how much they get to know about Africa and how they become so proud of who they are, when I see the transformation, it just gives me that drive. The 3 keywords that describe the Africa that I want, or Africa of the future, are first of all, curious. I wish that we're all curious about who we are as Africans, where we come from, so that we can shape where we're going. Openness, open to learning the things that we did not yet know, learning about ourselves and others. And the third one is engaging, to engage one another, open for conversations and dialogues, exchanges, open to new ways of learning, and even the history that we do not know about.
Vraiment une femme combative, une femme admirable, Ankweta Beatrice Acheleke. J'espère que notre rendez-vous se maintiendra au mois de janvier et qu'elle viendra ici nous raconter sa légende personnelle, nous raconter comment est-ce qu'elle a passé ces différentes étapes et comment elle a su entendre cette petite voix qui lui disait « retourne en Afrique » car c'est là où elle se réalise véritablement. Elle a fait énormément de choses en Autriche et ailleurs, mais c'est vraiment en Afrique qu'elle se réalise aujourd'hui. Et je vais vous parler d'une initiative qu'elle est en train de mettre en place et je vous invite, si vous le pouvez, à y participer. Alors, Ankweta Acheleke a décidé d'écrire, de faire des recueils de lettres, de mettre en place des recueils de lettres. Comme vous l'avez entendu dans ce document, elle a aujourd'hui une maison d'édition qui s'appelle Ubuntu Books et c'est dans cette maison d'édition qu'elle a produit ses 23 livres pour enfants. Alors, ce qu'elle se propose de faire, c'est d'écrire, de recueillir des lettres, lettres à l'univers, lettres à la pandémie, lettres de pardon, différentes lettres, d'en faire des recueils qui seront donc publiés. Pourquoi est-ce qu'elle fait ça? Parce que son discours, c'est de dire, ou sa philosophie, c'est de dire tout le monde a une voix et chacun a une voix qui compte. Et c'est sa façon de dire laissez un héritage à quelqu'un, laissez une trace de votre passage sur cette terre. Parce que dans 5 ans, 10 ans, 15 ans, 20 ans, quelqu'un lira cette lettre et Et cette lettre pourra l'inspirer, cette lettre pourra la guider, cette lettre pourra lui redonner du courage. Alors, je vous invite à prendre part à cette initiative qui est brillante. Je vais mettre, je ne sais pas si vous êtes sur cette page Facebook, sur la page Facebook de Connexions 360, je mettrai toutes les informations dessus et vous pourrez donc savoir comment procéder pour écrire votre lettre à l'univers ou votre lettre à la pandémie. Alors, vous allez vous dire, je ne sais pas écrire, comment est-ce que je vais m'y prendre? Elle a également prévu de coacher les personnes qui voulaient avoir une structure dans leur écriture et je mettrai également l'information pour suivre ces séances de coaching pour vous permettre d'écrire votre lettre. Pourquoi elle? Parce qu'elle a déjà écrit, parce qu'elle a écrit 23 ouvrages pour enfants, elle a écrit d'autres ouvrages, d'autres essais, mais là, elle a écrit des ouvrages pour enfants. Elle a coaché des personnes, elle a coaché des enfants. 14 de ces enfants ont été primés en Afrique du Sud. Plusieurs, je crois qu'elle en a 6 de ses livres ou plus ont été acceptés, ont été intégrés dans le curriculum, dans le conseil scolaire de Gauteng en Afrique du Sud. Donc, ce sont quand même d'énormes accomplissements. Et voilà pourquoi elle est une voie autorisée à vous offrir ce coaching-là et à vous encadrer pour écrire ces lettres. Donc, c'est en quelque sorte une façon de laisser un héritage collectif et intergénérationnel au moyen de l'expression écrite. Alors, je vous encourage à prendre part à cette initiative. Je trouve qu'elle est pertinente. Elle est particulièrement pertinente aujourd'hui où on traverse cette pandémie, où on a perdu énormément de gens. On n'a pas pu se dire au revoir certaines fois. On n'a pas pu laisser de traces. Alors, il est question aujourd'hui, je l'ai lu quelque part, il est question aujourd'hui de remplir le tiret qu'il y a entre la date de naissance et la date de décès. C'est quoi ce petit tiret-là? C'est quoi ce petit trait d'union? C'est quoi ce dash, comme on dit en anglais? Écrivez cette lettre et c'est une façon pour vous d'écrire votre dash, d'écrire votre tiret. Ne laissez pas aux autres survivants le soin de dire ce que vous auriez pu dire vous concernant votre vie, concernant votre apport au monde, concernant votre apport à la société. Écrivez-le vous-même à travers cette lettre. C'est tout pour aujourd'hui. Nous allons nous retrouver la semaine prochaine. Et restez dans l'esprit Ubuntu. Je suis parce que tu es et nous sommes ici parce que vous êtes là. La semaine prochaine, j'aurai un invité et nous reprendrons notre format habituel. Bonne semaine à tous, bon week-end à tous d'abord et bonne semaine à tous. It's a wrap for today. Au revoir.